Biologists continue to battle the blaze this Friday, but as dry conditions persist, it adds to another layer of difficulty for the response teams.
A controlled burn was meant to reset the Everglades.
Smoke was blowing from west to east, and it had gone as far as 441.
Instead, when the smoke thinned, crews saw thick coils stretched across open ash, an ambush predator exposed for the first time.
Since yesterday, it has almost doubled in size.
In one scorched morning, missing wildlife finally had an explanation, and recovery started sounding like a question. The first warnings weren't dramatic because absence rarely makes noise in a swamp. Hunters and airboat guides described marsh that felt strangely empty, like the background movement had been turned down even while wind and insects kept buzzing. Raccoon tracks stopped appearing on muddy banks. Marsh rabbits stopped flashing through sawgrass. Wading birds lingered longer over pools. Biologists matched those stories to road surveys and spotlight counts, and the same pattern kept repeating across southern Florida. Burmese pythons didn't flood the Everglades in one wave. They expanded like a shadow at the edge of vision, sliding canals, vanishing under vegetation mats, waiting beside trails where mammals once moved routinely. When prey thinned, the snakes shifted. Week by week, the loss felt gradual, easy to dismiss, until the ecosystem crossed a tipping point before anyone could agree it was real. By the time the story went national, the Everglades had already changed in ways that were hard to reverse. To see how, you have to follow the python's path into Florida, and the human choices that opened the door. The invasion started with a market, not a marsh. Through the late 20th century, hatchlings were imported and bred for the exotic pet trade, sold as manageable juveniles that looked harmless behind glass. Many owners didn't grasp what they were buying. A snake that can reach more than 15 feet, live for decades, and demand specialized housing and care. As costs climbed and cages shrank, some were released intentionally. Others escaped during storms, moves, or careless handling. At first, it didn't sound like a crisis. Over time, it became one. The earliest confirmed record of a wild Burmese python in the Everglades dates to 1979, a reference point that later anchored invasion timelines. For years, sightings stayed sporadic, feeding the belief that the animals couldn't truly establish in a wetland that still had seasonal cold snaps. That belief collapsed as reports rose through the 1990s, and biologists found evidence of breeding, not just survival. By the early 2000s, teams documented more captures, more road kills, and more credible accounts from people who knew the landscape. Then came an image that changed the tone. In 2005, a widely shared photograph showed a python that had attempted to swallow an alligator. The message was blunt. This wasn't a stray pet. The Everglades could support a predator, ambitious enough to target large native species, not just birds and small mammals. From that moment, researchers stopped asking whether pythons were present and started asking how far they had already spread, and whether reproduction was already outpacing every removal effort. Once breeding populations took hold, the Everglades began losing animals that once shaped daily life. Researchers with the United States Geological Survey and universities compared mammal observations before and after python expansion. In heavily invaded areas, they reported collapses so steep they were described as near total, often around 90% declines in medium-sized mammals. Those numbers mattered because raccoons, rabbits, and opossums are prey and scavengers inside the food web. When those roles vanish, the swamp doesn't merely look emptier, it behaves differently. Predators that depended on those mammals either shift diets, abandon territory, or fail. Bobcats thin out when easy meals disappear. Foxes and coyotes crowd edges and levees. Nesting birds face new pressure as the balance of predation changes. And because pythons don't just remove mammals, they eat birds directly. Even alligators, which sometimes kill or consume pythons, can't reliably control a population that breeds so efficiently. The result is a cascade that rewrites movement and risk across the landscape. Pythons also erase evidence. They swallow prey whole, digest completely, and slip back into cover with almost no trace. That's why the damage can feel abstract until long-term monitoring forces the scale into view, by which point recovery becomes slow and complicated. Restoring mammals isn't just remove snakes, animals return. the Everglades has to rebuild breeding populations and safe corridors. Scientists call it structural because it rewires daily energy flow. And the Everglades hides almost everything. Finding a python can feel like searching for a moving rope in a million acres of camouflage. Sawgrass prairies, mangrove edges, and hardwood hammocks stack layers of cover. Much of the terrain can't be reached by vehicle without damaging sensitive habitat. Even experienced crews miss snakes at arm's length because a python can lie motionless and blend into dark water. Their hunting strategy defeats most conventional search patterns. Burmese pythons are ambush predators. Long stillness, then a sudden strike. Their active movement windows are brief and unpredictable. They can remain submerged, travel canals and culverts, and shift after rain without leaving clear tracks. When temperatures drop, they tuck into shelter that's difficult and dangerous to inspect. Burrows, root tangles, dense reed beds. In this landscape, control becomes a detection problem first, because you can't remove what you can't reliably find. Traditional invasive methods struggle here. Traps catch some individuals, but pythons learn, avoid, or bypass devices designed for smaller pests. Poisoning isn't viable, because anything strong enough to affect a giant constrictor would also threaten native wildlife, pets, and people. Organized hunts remove animals, but removal rarely matches reproduction. Females lay large clutches, hatchlings disperse widely, and the swamp offers endless hiding space. Without better ways to reveal snakes, every plan becomes a grind. To outsmart a hidden predator, researchers weaponize the python's own breeding instincts. Teams capture adult males, implant radio transmitters, and release them back under strict monitoring. As temperatures rise and mating season begins, males roam in search of females, and the transmitter turns that movement into a signal humans can follow. The goal isn't to track one snake forever. It's to let him lead teams toward breeding clusters. When a tagged male lingers, biologists move in, scan vegetation, and often locate additional pythons nearby. Females are the critical target because removing one large female can prevent a clutch that might add dozens of hatchlings to the system. When the method works, it produces high-value removals and builds data on movement, habitat use, and seasonal patterns that improves future searches. This approach is widely known as the Judas snake technique, and its limits are clear. It requires skilled capture teams, veterinary support, and long days in punishing terrain. It doesn't scale neatly across the entire Everglades. Tagged snakes can die, lose transmitters, or move into areas too dangerous to access. Even at its best, it's a precision tool, not a population-wide solution. That's why managers kept searching for something that increases visibility at higher rates, and why attention returned to fire, because fire changes the rules of concealment. Fire has always belonged to the Everglades. Lightning ignites wet season burns that creep through sawgrass, clearing dead stems, recycling nutrients, and opening space for fresh growth. Modern controlled burns are planned around tight weather windows, mapped units, and crews placed to keep flames inside boundaries. After a large burn in 2018, biologists walking the blackened prairie reported an unusually high number of python carcasses, exposed where cover had vanished. No one treated it as a cure, but it suggested something important. Fire can reveal snakes that normally stay invisible, and sometimes kill those that fail to escape. The mechanism is blunt. Smoke and heat strip away a python's advantage. Burmese pythons are ectothermic, and often shelter in vegetation mats or shallow burrows, places that can become traps when fire advances. Thick smoke can disorient them, and radiant heat can push them into open ground where crews can finally detect them. Near the flame front, ground-level temperatures can exceed 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, lethal for large reptiles. For managers, the visibility is the prize. Each removed adult reduces future reproduction pressure. But fire doesn't choose targets. A burn that exposes an invasive constrictor can also injure native reptiles, amphibians, and small mammals that can't flee fast enough. Managers have to weigh non-target impacts, especially for protected species that share similar shelter sites. And even when a burn helps in one unit, the scale mismatch remains brutal. Pythons occupy a wide range, and a burn unit is only a fraction of it. For many researchers, fire is support, best used with rapid searches. Because eradication is unrealistic, most biologists now frame the mission as suppression and containment. reduce density where recovery is possible, and prevent expansion into new watersheds. That demands earlier detection, finding snakes before breeding populations take hold. And that's where emerging monitoring methods matter. One of the most promising is environmental DNA, or eDNA. Organisms shed trace genetic material into water and soil. Teams collect samples from canals and wetlands, test for python DNA, and flag hotspots even when no one has seen a snake directly. eDNA won't remove pythons by itself, but it can guide crews, improve early warning, and reduce wasted time searching empty habitat. Combined with telemetry, contractor hunts, and strategic burns, it tightens the net. Policy shifted too, because the invasion exposed how quickly the exotic pet trade can become ecological damage. In 2012, the United States Fish and Wildlife Service listed Burmese pythons as injurious wildlife under the Lacey Act, restricting importation and interstate transport. But regulation can't erase a population already breeding in the wild. The future depends on funding, better detection, and honest messaging. In the end, the Everglades tells a simple story with an expensive lesson. Consequences can arrive quietly, then become hard to reverse. A predator released through human decisions now forces humans to choose between imperfect tools and measured risks year after year, because the swamp won't reset itself on a timeline. And this fight won't be won by one perfect method. Recovery is built from many small decisions that keep pressure on the invasion. Every python removed buys a little space for raccoons, rabbits, and birds to return. Every burn that reveals hidden coils proves that visibility can be as powerful as force. If you want more investigations like this, subscribe to the Anomaly Report, because attention is one tool nature can't replace.